This podcast is brought to you by ShortsTV and is not affiliated with the Oscars or the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in any way.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the ShortsTV podcast. I'm Carter Pilcher, and I'm joined, as always, by the indefatigable Rasha Goel.
Well, thank you, Carter. I might have to look that word up. It's great to be back. How are you doing?
I'm having a great time. We're getting these podcasts under our belts. I'm really kind of starting to learn lots from all these Oscar-nominated filmmakers.
Oh, same here. You know, it's been so exciting to hear about their inspirations for making the film, their festival runs, their reactions to being nominated. And it's been exciting for me to see their journey from start to finish.
Well, and that will definitely be the case today as we have a true artist joining us as we speak to animator Adrien. Go.
Yes, and with Adrien, you know, he's previously had his short film, Old Fangs, play at the prestigious Annecy Film Festival, and he's also been a part of the animation teams behind the Oscar-nominated features The Secret of the Kells and Song of the Sea.
You bet. He's got a lot of experience, but now is his time, Adrien's moment, to enjoy the full Oscar experience as he talks about his short, Genius Loci, an experimental story about a young woman guided through a chaotic city by her spiritual guide.
Could you tell us about the title of the film and about the film itself?
Sure, yeah. So the film, it's a short film. It's called Genius Loci, and the name means in Latin the spirit of a place. And it's the story of a young woman who has some sort of like metaphysical walk around the neighborhood of her city and sees in the chaos of the city at night some sort of guide who kind of like guides her and transforming the phenomenon of the city around her.
What a beautiful, beautiful film. You know, if I have a choice of art direction from anybody, that is the most beautiful film I have ever seen.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. That's an incredible thing to hear. Thank you.
Genius Loci is absolutely full of interesting visuals. Can you explain the shape-shifting elements and what they represented in the film?
It's a relationship between the main character called Ren and her spirit. Her spirit kind of transforms the chaos of the city around her in a poetic way. And when she meets a friend of hers and tries to engage in a conversation, that kind of spirit that deconstructs the element around her doesn't stop. And she kind of asks it to stop. And so she has like a struggle against her own kind of perception of things at that point. I think it's like quite experimental. I wanted the film to be about letting go of control. I wanted in the film itself to drift away from the narration and from a classical understanding of the story arc and to be able to drift into something that is more like subconscious. So it's normal, I think, to have like a sensory approach to the film rather than an intellectual approach to the film.
When you look at it from so many different perspectives, I mean, including your approach to storytelling, but just the concept, what inspired you to tell this story? Is it based off any personal experiences, or was there something that happened to someone or in your life that inspired you to create this animation?
That's a good question. Thank you. It came from a few different places. One of them was friends of mine. Jennifer Evans, who was a musician, was telling me often about the feeling of being guided by a spirit when she was playing live, as in like she was not about if things were right or wrong, but just being in the moment, in a pure intuitive kind of like playfulness of the moment, which really inspired me to talk about the relationship between inspiration and spirituality, as if the place where ideas come from was kind of mystical. And also it was based on a friend of mine in Ireland, another friend of mine, who had this very evasive and elusive presence, very poetic point of view, but also a bit evading responsibility and kind of like hard to maintain in one place. And so I wanted to talk, like that person was really dear to me, and I wanted to talk about that free spirit.
One of the things that was really important in that journey of your character and her spirit character were symbols. And I just wondered if you could take us through some of the symbols that you used and what they meant.
I think symbolism and animation kind of go hand in hand in the history of animation film. Like it was based on storytelling, fairy tales, and character archetypes. That's how a lot of like stories were told, and animation through, I guess, mainly the mythical influence of Walt Disney was heavily based on symbolism. And what interested me was to take that history of animation and that general kind of like ground of animation and tell a story that felt modern and unique and intimate with a character. And to do a mix of the two of them was like the challenge that I had, and use like a visual language that was a bit modern, but with a way of doing animation that was quite traditional.
If you could just add to that as well too, I know sound played a huge component in this film because it's not just about the music but sound in general. So could you talk a little bit about that and how important that was to you in integrating this?
Yeah, absolutely. The sound was really important to me because it was made by my parents, who are both musicians. And they do contemporary music, improvised music mostly. And their approach to music, which I grew up with, was to consider the music as the activity of sound. It was kind of influenced by the American composer John Cage. And the idea to hear sounds, especially sounds from the city that are always changing as music, this magnification or like this observation and listening to the activity of sound and turn it into kind of poetry through the listening process really inspired me to talk about that. But also like visually what it does to us to observe the city not in a useful way, but in a way that is moving shapes and a bit like you're in nature, really. Like when you move through the city and you experience the feeling that you're in the forest, just because the movement of things always changes and you're always surprised by what you see.
Tell us a little bit more about the animals in the film and what they represented.
Yeah, sure. Well, my first films were with animal characters, which I really enjoyed. I kind of grew up with watching the films of Yuri Norstein. He's a Russian filmmaker who makes like a lot of fables with animal characters that I was really touched by. And there's a minotaur also in my film, used as a symbol to explain that some men in the city were kind of like acting a bit aggressively, and to compare them to the minotaur figure in mythology, to try and draw parallels between like being stuck in a maze and being aggressive in city streets. And symbols were great to use to give like depth to some moments and give them some kind of explanation that was a bit universal and without going too much into details. And also, she turns into a dog later, and I thought it was really. At first, I wanted to just show her as angry as possible. She's just raw emotion, and to turn her into a dog was like a good way to just bring her to just this raw emotion of like just being angry, barking, and running off. And also, it made sense because like the story of relationship of Ren with her spirit was that she turns all the chaos outside into like natural elements, and then when the chaos gets inside the main character, because she struggles to have a conversation and she gets upset, then she turns into a natural element as well. And although it might seem to be quite poetic, she actually really resents it. And so all this kind of dilemma was nice to explore when you make a character shift change. And also it's the beauty of animation, really. You can do anything you like.
And you've been working on this film for a while, I understand. This didn't just happen within a year or two. You've been working on the film since 2015?
Yeah, the first idea was presented to my producer in late 2015 or 2015, yeah. So it's been 5 or 6 years. That's crazy for a short film.
The film is amazing. But what about this entire experience? You've received an Oscar nomination for this beautiful piece of work. How did you feel when you heard about this nomination? And what are your thoughts even today as we're a few weeks away from the ceremony?
Well, the first thing is like an overwhelming joy. That's the first thing that kind of like this first wave that took me and all the film team all together. We felt this wave of joy, which was really beautiful. It's a really beautiful way to celebrate the film and to celebrate our work together. And then it felt quite surreal as well because our film, it feels quite artisanal, quite independent. And the Oscars is like this mythical platform that everybody grew up with watching, and it kind of like shaped the childhood of many people and the adulthood of many people. And so for the Academy to give us a nod and to look at us for a little bit and to let us sit with them at their table is quite an honor. It's really magical. And also it kind of builds up on this year that's been a bit crazy. And unfortunately, we won't be able to go ourselves, so that's a bit frustrating. But yeah, I'm really happy to be part of that adventure. And I'm also really happy to join my friend Tom Moore, who's also nominated this year and who I have the most amazing admiration for, who has taught me like most of the things I know in animation.
Oh, really?
Well, Tom Moore is a great guy, and for our listeners, his film is a feature-length film called Wolfwalkers, and it's a fabulous animation. And Tom is a very talented guy. He's been nominated before.
Yeah, he's absolutely a genius. I think, in my opinion, he reinvented 2D animation from an European perspective.
You're of the Tom Moore school.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm in the Moore gang. Yeah, ride or die.
Quick question. You've done this beautiful piece of art. You've suddenly been recognized as an artist and an animator by the biggest platform that you could ever be recognized by. What do you do next?
My dream would be to try and use the language, the experimental, like half narrative, half experimental language that I've been trying out in Genius Loci, and to turn it into a full feature. That would be my dream. But I'm not sure how realistic it is because doing full features is very, has a lot of not restraints, but limitations, financial ones, and for a public and for release. So I'm not sure how well it would adapt, but eventually, if I can get some people to believe it could work, I would love to try and use that cinematic language, which is kind of like destructed and a bit experimental on a feature length format. Let's hope it's possible, and surely the Oscars nomination could help.
Adrien, I'm curious to know how animation is received in the European market. I know there's a different love for it here in the US, but especially when you do films like the one that you did, what is the response there in the European market?
The French market that I know a bit better than the European one, it's really well received. We have like a really strong support for animation in France. We have like a few ways to get films financed and many ways to share them with the public. The Annecy Film Festival is a beautiful animation festival in France. And, so there's like the whole network of support is very strong in France and many schools, so there's many talents around, and it's looking really great for 2D animation in France. In Ireland as well, thanks to the Tom Moore team, and many other places in Europe. But in France especially, I think I'm really lucky to be in France and to make films at this time. And also, I think it's connected to a really amazing love for comic books from the French audience, and so like visually, people are used to consuming stories like in a visual form. Animation is very enjoyed, and many kind of classic films are made in France, so it's cool. It's great.
So Shorts TV is now going to be showing your film across the United States on the big screen. So how does that feel for you? I mean, especially to know your work is being seen by so many people.
That's really crazy in some way, really beautiful, of course, because that's the whole hope for a filmmaker is to share the work, our films, and but what's particularly kind of crazy to me is that because it's quite experimental, I really thought that it was just a small group of like-minded artists who would see it. I thought this kind of language was gonna be kind of shown or have a platform only among peers, kind of. So So now, like I have to realize that the audience is very varied, very broad, very global, and that's fascinating to me to remember that so many people are going to see your film, and so many different people are going to engage with it in different ways, and it reminds me to be very generous and attentive to the people I talk to when I make my work.
That's a lovely thing to say because I think it really does highlight all this hard, difficult work. 5 years of working on this animation is now being seen by people on big screens.
That's really great. Mhm.
And it's not, as Rasha can tell you, or I can tell you, in America, seeing the Oscar shorts is not a bunch of film festival people who are making films or know a lot about films. It's my 85-year-old dad and my 80-something-year-old mother.
That's amazing, and I can't wait to have feedback from everybody.
So speaking of screenings, what was your experience like with film festivals during the pandemic? Did you get to go to any of them?
So I had the opportunity to go to a couple of festivals before the pandemic happened. Thankfully, I was able to see it on the big screen and kind of bring closure to the experience, which was really important. And I realized how important it was when I met some of my friends who are releasing now their film and who have to wait before they see it with an audience. The experience changed quite a lot because it was a lot of interacting with fans and with the festivals through Zoom,
Yeah.
which made the experience kind of surreal again, like when we got good news or like a prize in a festival. It was really great, but somehow it just takes you by surprise. You just receive an email or a phone call out of nowhere, and it was a bit difficult, I have to say, at times, because like we work a lot on the film, thinking that we'll have this period then to accompany the film with different countries, different occasions, and to promote it and interact with people. When that whole thing is on in your own living room. It's not the craziest, how do you say, sacrifice that people had to make during the pandemic. I mean, like there's
Right.
much worse things than to have to
True.
experience a festival through the internet. It was fine, like relatively speaking, it was perfect.
Yes. But it is unexpected. It is a big change.
Lastly, can we ask you about the casting? How did you cast this particular character and her voice?
We did the main character Ren. We did a casting through Kazakh, my production company, where the screen was sent to 12 actresses, and Nadia Moussa, who is the talent behind the voice of Ren, was an obvious choice. She had like this deep voice with this kind of like confidence and raspiness, maybe, that was really perfect for the film. And when I met her, because it was by video at first, when I got to meet her, she was like kind of strikingly akin to the character, and we've since like developed like an amazing bond with Nadia. I'm really grateful for the work she's done. And the musician in the film, the organ player, is a friend of mine in Ireland called Georgia Cusack, who's a singer. And she hadn't done acting, but she had something with her voice because she was so used to speaking and singing into a microphone that she had like this really round, really comforting, really soothing voice that was kind of enchanting like this. I really liked working with her like that too.
So, and I just want to end with saying one thing. It is a very interesting time that opera and Genius Loci are these two very intellectual, interesting, almost artworks that have become films. Why? Where did they come from? Why now?
Gosh, I'm not sure. I think maybe the language of animation is kind of changing. Maybe having influence from the internet culture and something that is a bit linked to other things, but not only animation. I noticed that animation at the moment is quite linked to tattoo design, for example, to graphic design, to modern art, or how do you say, yeah, modern art. And so this variation of inspiration in the animation industry, I think, kind of like creates these projects like opera that was designed to be an installation piece, I think, in a gallery, I think, yeah.
Yes.
So these bridges with like other ways of expressing art, I think is really great. I see people in really beautiful schools in Paris of modern art schools doing animation as well. And so it's really great that this medium is getting the recognition it deserves, I think.
Rasha and I recently spoke to Eric O. He directed the short film that was nominated also along with you called Opera. And he was saying that previously animators always tried to bring artwork into their animations. But now animation is really going into the art museum. It's becoming fine art. What do you think? Do you see that's true? And does it apply to your film?
Well, I was trying to explore different languages, and I was really influenced by friends of mine who do modern art and who are like in that environment more, and the spontaneity that they use, and also the language that they use. And I've seen people who have experimented with animation in galleries and stuff like that. So I see the influence of other types of creatives in the world going into animation, and that's really wonderful to see, because animation is quite endless, the possibilities you have with animation. So this change is happening at the moment, and I'm really happy that it does. Yeah. And the fact that Genius Loci has like a platform in the Oscar is kind of like talks about this, and opera, like you said, that a different language can be used in animation and talk about things in a different way, and also experimental animation having a spot in festivals and hopefully in theaters soon.
I think you and Eric O, who did Opera, are definitely at what I would call the vanguard of art and animation. You're kind of on the edge and leading the charge. It's a fun year.
That's a very high praise, and thank you so much. I'm really happy to hear that.
And thank you, Adrien. Merci for being here today.
Merci à vous.
We
Merci d'équipe
appreciate it.
ShortsTV. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adrien. It's great film.
Carter, what an interesting interview. You know, that film has so many metaphors, a lot of symbolism. I was just so intrigued to hear his process of implementing all of these elements into his animation.
He is a real talent. And, you know, he's worked on these huge movies. He's done this, which is absolutely groundbreaking. He's taken all these elements, created a new format, really incredible visuals. It's definitely a unique film. And one of the real joys of the Oscar experience this year is seeing these completely new, different films.
And you know, there are a lot of parallels between his film and opera, where we can now see that animation is playing a bigger role in other art forms. So that's really fascinating to me, because it's great that when we talk to these filmmakers, we can see how this new format is developing right as it's happening. Like, these guys are the innovators. They're creating it in this moment. So I definitely think it's going to be a tight race this year.
Well, and I even think the tight race is one thing. Everybody can't win. What's really important is I think we're seeing change. Real, interesting, and new groundbreaking change. And I think that's one of the things that's really special about this year for the Oscars.
Absolutely. Well, for all of those who are listening, we would love to hear your thoughts on which short was your favorite. So make sure that you tweet us at ShortsTV US.
And don't forget to subscribe. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully we're going to see you next time.